Maple Glen looked like the kind of town that had been dipped in honey and frozen in time. Tidy rows of Victorian houses lined its streets, each with flower boxes on the windows and hand-painted mailboxes. Neighbors waved at one another from porches. Kids still rode bikes until sunset. To outsiders, it was the picture of suburban peace. To the Marshall family, who had moved in just 5 weeks ago from the city, Maple Glen felt like a much-needed reset. Luke Marshall, an accountant, had landed a remote job. His wife, Jenna, was a preschool teacher on sabbatical. Their daughter, Sarah, just 3, had never known life outside a cramped apartment until now. She loved the wide lawn, the wind chimes on their porch, and especially the park across the street. Sarah was precocious, sharp-eyed, always watching, often saying things that made adults pause, sometimes funny, sometimes oddly wise. But since their move, something had changed. At first, it was little things. She didn't want to go near the windows at night. She said the neighbor's house was sad and covered her ears when they walked past it. Then came the nightmares. They started 2 weeks after the move, screaming fits in the middle of the night. Sarah would wake up crying, saying, "He's down there," and pointing to the floor. Jenna and Luke assumed it was just the stress of change, new home, new smells, unfamiliar shadows. But Sarah insisted there was a man in the basement. Their basement was empty, of course. Luke had checked it 3 times. "You're safe, baby," Jenna whispered one night, holding her tight. "There's no man, just a dream." Sarah looked up at her with tear-streaked cheeks. "Not our basement," she said. "His." Jenna brushed it off, but a chill worked its way down her spine. The neighbor's house had been a subject of whispered conversation among locals. It was the only home on the street that hadn't been maintained, shingles curling, porch sagging, windows covered in grime. It had no lights, no car, no visible signs of life. Locals called it the Turner place, though no one seemed to know who Turner was or why the house sat empty. One Saturday, the local police department held its annual community day at the town square. There were balloons, barbecue, pony rides, and a demonstration by the K-9 unit. Sarah lit up when she heard there would be dogs. She loved animals. Jenna thought the distraction might do her good. The town square buzzed with activity. Children swarmed the fire truck, touching buttons and trying on helmets. Parents sipped lemonade and browsed booths with homemade candles and soap. Then the police officers arrived with their K-9 partners. Among them was Officer Ramirez with Rex, a large German shepherd who stood poised and alert. The crowd cheered as the dogs performed their drills, finding hidden items, obeying commands, and apprehending mock suspects. Sarah clung to her mother's hand at first, quietly watching. But then her eyes locked onto Rex. She stopped moving. Her expression turned solemn, almost haunted. Jenna felt her daughter's grip tighten. "Mommy," Sarah said softly, "that dog knows." Jenna looked down, confused. "Knows what, sweetie?" Without answering, Sarah let go of her mother's hand and slowly walked toward Rex. She paused a few feet away, her gaze unwavering. Then she raised her small hand and pointed straight at the dog. "Bad man," she said. People around her laughed. Nervously, Officer Ramirez crouched beside Rex. "He's actually a very good boy," he said kindly. "Helps us catch bad guys." Sarah shook her head, now louder. "Bad man, basement." The laughter died instantly. Jenna rushed over, embarrassed. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "She's been having dreams lately. She doesn't mean anything by it." But Officer Ramirez didn't look amused. In fact, he looked concerned. His eyes studied Sarah carefully, and then Rex, who, strangely, wasn't acting like his usual calm self. His ears were up, his body stiff, eyes focused on the child. Ramirez straightened and gave a short nod. "Don't worry, ma'am," he said, but he was already turning back to his teen. Sarah looked up at her mom. "He's in there," she whispered. "The dog knows." Jenna squeezed her daughter's hand tighter. Something about the way she said it sent a ripple of unease down her spine. She had no idea her little girl had just cracked open a door to something far more terrifying than a bad dream. The moment hung thick in the air, like the pause before a thunderclap. Sarah's words, spoken so softly, yet so clearly, had changed the mood from cheerful to uneasy. Parents who had been chuckling moments before now exchanged uncertain glances. Children stopped giggling. A nearby vendor turned down their radio. Officer Ramirez, who had handled countless children during his community outreach years, felt a ripple of tension that didn't make sense. At least not yet. He crouched again beside Rex, whose tail was no longer wagging. The dog stood alert, nose in the air, body stiff as stone. Ramirez put a steadying hand on his partner's collar, but Rex didn't budge. "Hey there," Ramirez said gently, trying to keep things light. "You said, bad man. What did you mean, sweetheart?" Sarah pointed again, this time not at the dog but toward the street beyond the crowd. "He's close. Rex can smell him." Ramirez's professional instincts kicked in like a switch. He was trained to trust his canine more than most humans. If Rex was acting strangely, there was a reason. But a reason that made sense coming from a 3-year-old? That part didn't fit. Yet there was something unsettlingly sincere in her eyes. Something beyond her years. Jenna stepped forward quickly, scooping Sarah into her arms. "I'm really sorry, officer. She's been saying weird things ever since we moved. I think it's just dreams, maybe too much screen time or something." Ramirez nodded politely, but his eyes never left Sarah's face. "Dreams, huh?" He sighed, smiling slightly. "Does she always dream about basements?" Jenna blinked, caught off guard by the question. "Actually, yeah. How did you know?" Ramirez didn't answer right away. He straightened up and walked Rex in a slow circle, scanning the crowd and letting the dog do what he did best. Rex sniffed the air, his muscles coiled tight like he was waiting for someone. Ramirez keyed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Ramirez at Town Square. Are we tracking any open warrants within a 5-block radius?" There was a pause, then a scratchy response. "Negative, Ramirez. All clear on active warrants this week." Still, he couldn't shake the way. Sarah had looked at the dog, not with fear but recognition. Ramirez turned back toward the marshals. "You mind if I ask where you live?" Jenna hesitated, her grip tightening on Sarah, who now rested her head on her mother's shoulder, eyes fluttering like she was falling asleep. "Just a few blocks over. Willow Lane, number 14. Ramirez's expression changed. Willow Lane. He knew that street. More specifically, he knew that one weird house at the end of it. The abandoned one. His mind went back to a briefing from almost 2 years ago. There had been whispers of squatters using empty homes as observation posts, sometimes linked to regional trafficking networks. No hard evidence had ever surfaced, so the reports were shelved. But now, standing in the middle of a peaceful community event, with a retired soldier of a dog reacting like there was an enemy in sight, and a toddler pointing straight into a mystery, he had the sudden, undeniable feeling this wasn't coincidence. "Has your daughter said anything else?" Ramirez asked gently. Jenna sighed. "She says there's a man in a basement. Not ours, the neighbors. She says he's watching. It's like she just knows something's wrong, but she's 3. Kids have wild imaginations." Ramirez nodded, but inside, a knot was forming in his gut. "That's the old Turner place next to you, right?" Jenna looked surprised. "I think so. It's a mess. I've never seen anyone come or go." "That's the problem," Ramirez said quietly. He clipped Rex's leash to his belt, patted the dog's side, then turned to Jenna. Listen, this might be nothing, but I'd like to stop by later. With a social services rep. We just want to make sure everything's okay. Maybe let Rex take a walk through the area. Would that be all right? Jenna hesitated, glanced at Sarah, and then nodded. Of course, if it'll put this whole weird thing to bed. Ramirez gave her a small smile. Sometimes, ma'am, the weird things are worth listening to. As they walked away, Sarah opened her eyes. Peeking over her mother's shoulder, she pointed toward the Turner house again and whispered, "He's waiting." By the time the Marshalls returned home that afternoon, the laughter of the parade felt like a memory from another life. Jenna parked the car in their gravel driveway, eyeing the rotting structure next door with renewed unease. The Turner house always gave her the creeps, but now her imagination, fueled by Sarah's bizarre declaration and Officer Ramirez's concerned tone, was in overdrive. The house didn't just look abandoned, it looked forsaken. The shutters were broken, hanging, crooked like limp eyelids. Ivy snaked up the side of the siding, and the porch sagged inward like the house had exhaled its last breath long ago. No lights, no mail, no car, no trash bins. But there was always that feeling, like it was watching. Luke met them at the door, drying his hands on a dish towel. "Hey, how was the—" His voice trailed off when he saw Jenna's face. "What happened?" She sighed and passed Sarah into his arms. She said something weird again. Sarah squirmed lazily against his shoulder. "I told the dog about the bad man," she mumbled sleepily. Luke raised an eyebrow. "The what?" "We'll talk inside," Jenna said. As Sarah napped upstairs, Jenna filled Luke in her words quiet and tight, like she didn't want the house to hear. She told him everything. The dog, Sarah pointing, the word basement, the look in Officer Ramirez's eyes when she mentioned the Turner house. Luke was skeptical. "Honey, I know she's been having nightmares. And that house is creepy, sure, but it's been empty for years. She's 3. This is probably just her way of processing the move." "She didn't just say there was a man," Jenna said, voice shaking. "She said the dog knows. And the officer said he'd seen that house in a case file before. You don't find that ... strange?" Luke opened his mouth, then closed it again. He glanced out the kitchen window toward the Turner place. For the first time since moving in, he felt a flicker of something unwelcome. It was like trying to remember a detail from a bad dream, one you didn't know you'd had. Later that evening, a police cruiser rolled slowly down Willow Lane and parked near the curb. Officer Ramirez stepped out, this time accompanied by a second officer and a woman from Child Protective Services named Donna Holt. Donna had warm eyes and a calm voice. They didn't come with sirens, and they didn't knock on doors. They were just here to walk the area. As Ramirez had put it, Jenna and Luke met them outside. Sarah stayed in the living room, painting with watercolors. "We'd like to take a walk with Rex around the perimeter of the property next door," Ramirez explained. "I'll be honest with you, it's probably nothing. But sometimes a dog picks up something human eyes don't." Luke nodded uneasily. "Of course, we want to help." Rex led the way, nose close to the ground, tail stiff. He didn't bark, but he didn't relax either. He circled the perimeter twice, pausing briefly near the side of the house, just below a rusted basement window, half hidden by weeds. He growled low once, not at the door, not at a sound. At the ground, Ramirez knelt beside the dog and sniffed the air. "Anything?" Dana asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked up to the basement window and shined a flashlight through. The cracked dust, concrete and something else, a faint scrape. Like metal shifting against stone. Ramirez straightened slowly. "We'll need a warrant," he said. "Soon." That night, Sarah stood at the upstairs window in her pajamas. staring into the shadows of the Turner place. "What are you doing up, honey?" Jenna asked softly. Walking in. Sarah didn't turn her head. He heard Rex. "He's angry now." Jenna's skin prickled. "Who, baby?" "The man who hides in the dark. He said if I talk again, he'll come here next." Jenna knelt down beside her, heart racing. "Sweetie, there's no man." Sarah finally turned. Her eyes were wide and very awake. "Not yet," she whispered. The warrant came faster than expected. By mid-morning the next day, 3 unmarked police vehicles rolled up to Willow Lane, accompanied by a forensics van and a local judge in plain clothes. Ramirez stood by with Rex, fully suited up now in his tactical vest. Donna Holt returned too, her earlier calm now replaced with a professional edge. What had begun with the whispers of a toddler had become an official operation, and the Marshalls watched from their living room window. Jenna clutched Sarah close on the couch, while Luke stood behind the curtains, phone recording the scene not to post, but to process. None of it felt real. The old Turner house seemed to resist their presence. The front door was warped shut, requiring a crowbar to force it open. Dust billowed out in clouds, stinging the officer's eyes. The smell inside was rot and mildew, with a sharp tang of something else, something that didn't belong. Rex was the first to enter, led by Ramirez. The dog's nose twitched violently as he sniffed the floorboards, the corners, the mold-covered walls. He led them straight to the back of the house, to a large area of water-damaged linoleum, barely clinging to the warped wood beneath. Then he stopped. A deep, guttural growl rumbled from his chest. Ramirez signaled to the other officers. "Here." 2 men pried at the edges of the flooring with crowbars. The wood creaked, split, and gave way, revealing a crude wooden hatch underneath. Padlocked, but old. Very old. One swing of a hammer broke the lock clean off. Ramirez opened it slowly. A black hole stared back at them. He clicked on his flashlight and peered inside. Wooden stairs, steep and narrow, descended into darkness. The air that rose up was cooler, but carried the unmistakable smell of decay and something metallic. Ramirez took a breath, then descended first. Rex close by. The basement was worse than anyone imagined. The walls were covered with makeshift insulation sheets of foam nailed over brick. In the far corner stood a grimy cot with a thin, stained mattress. A camping lantern sat next to it, still functional. Water bottles, fast food wrappers, and a single folding chair. Beside the chair, a camera on a tripod. And behind it all, the wall of photos. Ramirez stepped closer. The snapshots were of children, dozens of them, playing in yards, riding bikes, walking home from school. Some were printed, others were Polaroids, taped and pinned with disturbing precision. Red markers circled certain images. Sarah was in one of them. So was another child from across the street. "Oh my God," one of the officers muttered. He was watching them, planning something. Rex snarled again, this time facing a shelf. In the corner, where a panel of drywall had been recently installed, Ramirez tapped it with his knuckles. Hollow. He pried it open with his knife. Inside, a narrow crawl space. And inside that, chains. Tiny chains. They stared, silent. The truth didn't need words anymore. Back upstairs, the forensic team sealed the home as a crime scene. Evidence was bagged, and a full property sweep was ordered. Ramirez exited slowly, face pale, jaw tight. Dana followed, her hands trembling slightly as she jotted notes. "It was real," she said under her breath. "That little girl, she was right," Ramirez nodded. "She didn't just sense something. She saved someone." Across the street, Jenna saw them returning and stepped outside. "What did you find?" she asked, voice already cracking. Ramirez removed his cap. "We're not ready to release everything yet. But what your daughter told us, it likely stopped something terrible." He paused. "We believe someone was living there, watching the neighborhood, watching your family, and planning." Jenna turned pale. She looked up at the second-story window. Sarah stood there again, quietly watching. That night, a Turner house sat under floodlights, cordoned off with yellow tape. Police guarded the property. But for everyone in Maple Glen, the real terror wasn't the man they hadn't yet caught. It was how close he had been all along. 2 days after the discovery, the FBI arrived. The Turner house was no longer just a local crime scene. Forensics teams worked around the clock, photographing every inch of the hidden basement, carefully removing hard drives, fingerprints, fibers, and photo negatives. The wall of children's photos had been dismantled with surgical care. There was one priority now: find the man who had lived there before he could vanish for good. The breakthrough came on the third day. One of the fingerprints pulled from a drawer. Handle in the basement matched an open case in the federal database. Daniel Haskins, 42 years old, wanted in connection with a multi-state child trafficking ring based out of Ohio. He had been the subject of an interstate manhunt 3 years prior, but had vanished before a raid took place. Authorities believed he fled into the northeast. Now, it appeared he had taken root in Maple Glen. Worse still, he hadn't been hiding. He'd been hunting. Sarah's photograph had been circled 3 times in red ink. Notes scrawled beside it. Isolated backyard, no cameras, mother alone during day. Similar notations had been made beside several other children's photos. It was a predator's playbook. The realization sent shockwaves through the police department. Maple Glen's residents were stunned. Parents held their kids closer. Stranger danger suddenly felt very real, not like something from a documentary or a distant headline. The marshals, meanwhile, had been moved to a temporary location under protective surveillance. Jenna had barely slept since the raid. She kept replaying Sarah's words over and over again. The dog knows. He's in the basement. He's watching. She hadn't believed her at first. How could she? Luke tried to comfort her, but he was shaken too. She didn't guess Jenna. She knew. At the safe house, FBI agents asked Sarah a few gentle questions with Dana Holt present. But Sarah didn't seem scared, just thoughtful. When they asked how she knew about the bad man, she shrugged. "I heard him in my sleep," she said simply. "He was saying mean things. I saw his eyes in the floor." Everyone in the room exchanged quiet glances. No one had an explanation. Back at the precinct, Ramirez watched the surveillance footage again, Rex freezing in front of the floorboards, then Sarah stepping forward, pointing. Bad man, basement. It didn't make sense. It never would. But facts were facts, and thanks to that moment, they now had an identity and a target. With Haskins' name now on every federal watch list, tips began pouring in. A gas station. Clerk in Allentown remembered seeing someone matching his photo buying supplies late at night, days before the raid. A woman in Scranton said she'd seen him sleeping in an abandoned van near a truck stop. The manhunt intensified. Meanwhile, the media caught wind of the bizarre origin of the case. A 3-year-old girl who had somehow sensed a criminal in hiding, and a loyal police dog who confirmed her suspicions. Local news turned into national headlines. Toddler's instinct leads police to fugitive's hideout. Preschool psychic. 3-year-old uncovers child trafficking ring. The dog, the girl, and the basement secret. Ramirez was interviewed live on national TV. Rex sat beside him, stoic as ever. When asked what convinced him to act on Sarah's words, Ramirez didn't hesitate. "I've worked with Rex for 7 years. He's never misread a situation. But that day, that little girl looked him in the eye and saw something none of us did. and he listened. The story took hold across the country. Celebrities tweeted their support. True crime podcasts speculated on Sarah's strange gift. And behind all the noise, law enforcement agencies quietly ramped up their efforts to take down Haskins and whoever he worked with. But in the middle of the chaos, Sarah stayed blissfully unaware. She sat on a hotel room floor, painting a picture with crayons. It showed a little girl, a dog with a gold badge, and a tall shadow standing behind bars. Beneath it, in crooked letters, she wrote, "We saw you." By the end of the week, Sarah Marshall had become the most talked-about child in America. Story had spread like wildfire, not just because of the shocking details of the basement discovery, but because of the surreal way it had all started. Talk shows, podcasts, and morning news anchors couldn't get enough of it. A 3-year-old girl, haunted by dreams and pointing to a police dog, had uncovered a predator hiding right next door. It sounded like a movie script, except it wasn't. Divine intervention, some called it. A psychic gift, others suggested. Hyper-awareness, said psychologists trying to explain it logically. But none of the theories explained the same troubling truth. Sarah had known something no one else did, and she hadn't been afraid to speak. The Marshalls were overwhelmed. Jenna had stopped reading the headlines. Every interview request, every phone call from networks offering appearance fees, every knock from reporters, it all felt like noise. She wasn't interested in turning her daughter's trauma into a media circus. Sarah was still just a little girl who colored pictures, spilled juice, and asked for bedtime stories. She didn't want her famous. She wanted her safe. FBI agents had assured the Marshalls that the manhunt for Daniel Haskins was the agency's top priority. He had become more than a fugitive. He was now the center of a national scandal. The photographs found in the Turner basement led to new victims, previously unidentified. Across 3 states, investigations were opening. What had started as a local case had exposed a wider, horrific network. And at the heart of it all was Sarah and the dog she had spoken to. The Maple Glen Police Department, once a sleepy small town force, had turned into the epicenter of media attention. Officer Ramirez did his best to shield Rex from the madness, but there was no stopping it. One moment, they were on patrol. The next, Rex was being filmed receiving a Medal of Honor from the governor. Still, Ramirez kept things grounded. He visited Sarah, often never in uniform, always with Rex. "Doggy," Sarah would shout, arms wide, as the big German shepherd came bounding into the living room. Rex, the battle-hardened canine who once chased down armed suspects, melted into a puddle whenever he saw her. He'd drop to his belly, tail thumping, while Sarah brushed his fur with a plastic toy comb and whispered secrets into his ears. Ramirez watched them. Quiet. It amazed him still. That bond, that moment. He remembered it vividly. Rex's tense ears up, and Sarah, barely tall enough to reach his nose, saying, "Bad man, basement." He'd never forget it. "You think she's special?" Donna Holt asked him one afternoon as they walked outside after a visit. "I think she's connected to something," Ramirez said. "Whether that's instinct, spiritual, or something else. Don't know, but I've been in law enforcement 15 years. I've never seen anything like that." Across town, Maple Glen had changed too. What was once a quiet neighborhood was now a community on high alert. Parents installed security cameras. Neighborhood watch groups popped up overnight. But there was also a newfound closeness shared. Protectiveness that hadn't existed before. The children of Willow Lane no longer played alone. And no one, not a single person, passed the ruins of the Turner house without a second glance. Jenna started seeing drawings in windows handmade. Crayon signs reading "Thank you, Sarah" and "Hero Rex." The town council voted unanimously to transform the lot where the Turner house stood into a children's park. They named it Sarah's Grove. It was there, under the shade of maple trees, that a stone plaque was installed. Carved into it was the image of a little girl, pointing at a loyal German shepherd. Below it, simple words read, "Sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest truth." It had been nearly a month since the raid on the Turner house, but for the Marshalls, time still felt suspended, like they were living between before and after. The nightmares had lessened. Sarah now slept through most nights, curled up with a stuffed German shepherd doll the police department had gifted her. But sometimes, when the wind rattled the windows or a shadow stretched too far across the wall, she'd whisper things that made Jenna's chest tighten all over again. "He's still trying to come back," Sarah said one morning while brushing her doll's hair, "but Rex is louder now." Jenna didn't know what that meant. She wasn't sure she wanted to. The FBI continued to check in, updating the family quietly but frequently. Daniel Haskins had not yet been caught, but they were close. Surveillance footage had placed him in a neighboring state, traveling on foot, avoiding major roads and public spaces. He was alone. Desperate. Dangerous. "We're getting closer," one agent promised. "It's not a matter of if, just when." To help ease the pressure, the Marshalls moved back home under increased surveillance. Officer Ramirez had offered to personally patrol their street during the night shift. Dana Holt arranged for trauma counselors to meet with Sarah once a week, not in a formal office, but through play therapy. Finger paints, puppets, and stories. "She's processing it," Donna told Jenna after one session. "In her own way. Children don't forget things like this, but sometimes they remember them through symbols and feelings, not details." Jenna nodded, grateful and heartbroken. Rex became a constant presence in Sarah's life. Though still officially on active duty, Ramirez had begun making serious plans to retire in soon. "He's earned it," he told the department. And frankly, he's already chosen his next job, guarding one little girl. The town of Maple Glen kept its promise. Sarah's Grove opened quietly, with no media, no reporters, just neighbors, families, and a gathering of people who now understood the power of listening. The mayor, holding back tears, thanked the Marshalls for their bravery. A swing set, donated by the fire department, was placed under a massive maple tree. Beneath it, a sign read, "Where every child is seen, and every voice matters." Sarah ran from one end of the park to the other, giggling as Rex trotted after her, tail wagging. For the first time in weeks, Jenna let herself smile freely. But peace, as they were learning, is never guaranteed. That evening, just after sunset, a knock came at the door. Luke opened it cautiously. It was Officer Ramirez, his face tense, jaw set. "We found something," he said. Inside, he laid a folder on the kitchen table and opened it to a blurry image pulled from a security camera. A man in a hooded jacket, walking past a rural store at night. His face was partially obscured, but the build, the gait, it matched Haskins. He was only 25 miles from here. 2 nights ago. Jenna's breath caught in her throat. "He's coming back?" Ramirez didn't answer right away. "We think he's circling. Maybe trying to return to familiar ground. He may not know the basement's been found. He may be watching." Luke closed the folder. "Then we don't wait." They reinforced the home security system that night. Ramirez had a cruiser stationed at both ends of Willow Lane. Neighbors were asked to keep porch lights on after dark. Everyone was on alert, but no one panicked, because they weren't the same frightened community anymore. They were ready. And above all, they were together. That night, as Jenna tucked Sarah into bed, she noticed her daughter had drawn a new picture. It showed their house, lit from every window, surrounded by trees. A tall, dark figure stood in the distance, beyond the fence. But between him and the house was a big brown dog standing guard. Jenna kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered, "Rex will keep us safe, sweetheart." Sarah nodded sleepily. "And you too, Mommy, because I told him." Outside, under the moonlight, Rex sat alert at the front window, unmoving. He was waiting for something, Dot or someone. The night Daniel Haskins returned to Maple Glen, no one saw him arrive, but someone sensed it. Dot. It was just after 2 a.m. The town was silent, the kind of silence so deep it hums in your ears. Rex, lying at the foot of Sarah's bed, stirred. His ears perked. His nose twitched. Then, without a sound, he rose and padded to the window, muscles tense, eyes focused. Dot. Down the street, shadowed by trees, a figure moved. Haskins was thinner now, ragged from weeks on the run. His hair was longer, face unshaven, eyes hollow. But his hands still knew how to pry open back gates. He wore gloves, carried wire cutters. He approached the lot where the Turner house once stood, now Sarah's Grove. His plan was unclear. Maybe he wanted to retrieve something. Maybe he wanted revenge. Maybe he didn't know what he wanted anymore. He was running on fear and madness. He didn't make it far. Dot, as he stepped onto the grass. A low growl froze him mid-step. Rex. The shepherd had slipped from the marshal's front door when Luke opened it to check a strange noise. Now he stood between Haskins and the neighborhood, eyes burning gold in the moonlight, growl deep enough to shake bone. Haskins turned and ran. He didn't get far. Officer Ramirez, already parked at the end of the street, had been watching. The motion sensor alerts, the trigger words spoken through Jenna's panic call, "He's back," were all they needed. Within seconds, Ramirez was out of the car, chasing on foot. Rex led the way. The pursuit cut through yards, over fences, into a patch of woods behind the neighborhood. Haskins stumbled through brush, but he couldn't outrun the dog. With a warning bark, Rex surged forward and knocked him down, pinning him by the arm, just enough force to hold, not enough to maim. Ramirez caught up moments later and slapped. On the cuffs, Haskins thrashed wildly, but it was over. The predator had returned to his den, and he had been caught by the same dog and the same child who had sensed him in the first place. The next morning, Maple Glen felt like a town breathing again for the first time in weeks. Haskins was taken into federal custody. His arrest led to 2 more raids across state lines and the rescue of several at-risk children. What he had left behind, the photos, the lists, the plans, would help law enforcement for years. But for the marshals, the most important part was simple. He was gone. He would never come back. Jenna stood in the park later that day, watching Sarah play near the swing set. Children from the neighborhood, once kept inside, now ran freely. Laughter returned to the breeze. Rex lay under the maple tree, his eyes never leaving Sarah. A week later, the town held a small ceremony. It wasn't loud or flashy. There were no reporters, no cameras. Just families, officers, and neighbors whose lives had been quietly changed forever. Ramirez stepped forward and removed Rex's vest. "With honor," he said, smiling at Sarah, "Rex is hereby retired." He knelt and held the leash out to Jenna and Luke. "If you're willing, I believe he's already made his choice." Sarah gasped, eyes wide. "He's mine now." Jenna knelt beside her, voice breaking with emotion. "He's ours, sweetheart." From that day forward, Rex never left Sarah's side. He followed her to preschool drop-off, sat beside her during story time, and laid under her bed every night, not as a guard dog, as family. Years later, the story of the girl and the dog would be written into a children's book. Schools across the country would use it to teach courage and intuition. But for Sarah Marshall, it was never about being a hero. It was about listening to the feeling no one else could explain and speaking up, even when she didn't fully understand. And for Rex, it was about protecting the one person who had seen something in him no one else did. Not just a dog. A guardian, a friend for life.